Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Liias. I'm a Roman Catholic priest and a senior priest on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham, which is the neighboring community to Melrose, where we tape this show here at Melrose Mass TV. The program, Wellsprings of Faith, is designed to reflect on the journey of faith in a person's life and the fruit of that faith in our world. Today I welcome back a recent guest that we had, Dr. Scott Sunquist. He's the president of Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, which is in Hamilton, Massachusetts, on the North Shore. And our previous interview was really about his life and his journey as faith, his rich experience in missionary work in East Asia. And now the second show is really going to concentrate not so much on his life, but on the life of the school that he's been called to be president of. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And the Gordon College, Gordon Theological Seminary has had a rich part in my life. When I was an Episcopal priest, I started having seminarians show up from Gordon Conwell Seminary at an Episcopal church, which is not usually where they would go for field work. And that was back in the 70s. And so I began to get to know that community very well, and so it's and then I became a mentor and ministered training students there and I brought many a student into the priesthood of the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church, and a few of them
did they follow you?
A few of them have become Catholic priests. Every once in a while I get a call from one of my former seminaries. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me and my life, but your life. So let's talk about Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. Let's start with the name, because I know you're the roots of that.
Now see, I'm a historian, and I have a saying that I tell everybody, and I want you to remember it.
Okay.
History is very important.
Very important.
Not just important, it's very important.
Well, but one of my favorite saints, John Henry Newman, said, once you study history, you seek being a Protestant, so be careful.
Well, I just don't go back that far. But actually, we have a daughter who's Orthodox.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me on the phone the other day.
Actually, Gordon Conwell is from two seminaries. It formed in 1969 from Conwell School of Theology, which was in Philadelphia. In North Philly, about a mile or two from where our daughter lives now. And Conwell...
And you grew up in that area, you said.
Yeah, I grew up in the Philadelphia area, along the main line. But Conwell was an interesting guy. He was a newspaper reporter. He started a newspaper out in Wisconsin. He was a real estate person. He was a great Sunday school teacher. He was a writer. He was a musician. He had it all. And he had a lot of energy. He was very bright. He fought in the Civil War because he heard discussion in New York City. He was raised in western Massachusetts. Rode down to New York and heard people talk about slavery and about the Civil War. So he went back and recruited people and fought in the Civil War. He had a long-term commitment to the black race. So by the time Conwell School of Theology left Temple, because it started in his church.
Oh, it was a
his
seminary.
Church was called Temple Baptist Church,
and
it became Temple University, and then it became very secular. So the seminary moved up here, and by the time it came, 75% of the students were black. So Conwell School of Theology, in light of his concern for the city and the black race, dominated there. So when it came up to Hamilton, Massachusetts, it was a problem. As a matter of fact, most of the faculty were very upset because they made a commitment to train within the urban setting, and here we are with horse farms and everything, and Myopia Hunt Club. And so it was very, very jarring for them. It took us about 7 years to get back in the city when we started the Center for Urban Ministerial Education, which is in Roxbury in Boston.
I didn't know that part of the history of the place.
Another little footnote is when Conwell was in Massachusetts, for a period of about 5 years, he taught a Sunday school class at a place called Tremont Temple. 850 people in a Sunday school class. Now, just imagine that. Just 850 men. It was a men's class.
Men's class,
So he was a great teacher, a great preacher, entrepreneur. And by the time he built, I'm sorry I digress, but he built Temple Baptist Church in Philly. It was the largest church in North America. So these are very influential people. A.J. Gordon started out a missionary training institute, and the reason I say that is because those two concerns, training black leaders, training people for missionaries, along with training for the church, continue to be central to what we do today.
Right. So it's interesting that combination of the sort of different sets of DNA coming together, and then of course you know the actual merger was facilitated by Billy Graham, right? Tell us a little bit.
Billy Graham and his brother-in-law, a guy named Leighton Ford. Leighton Ford was on the board of Conwell School of Theology. Billy Graham on Gordon Divinity. And they worked that together along with Pew, provided some of the money. And then Ockengay. So you have, Ockengay started the National Association of Evangelicals, Christianity Today, the first president Fuller, the first president Gordon Conwell, so he was well connected. And he knew Billy Graham through all of these different connections. And so he was able to attract a lot of strong faculty very early on because he was so well known.
Someday, I don't know, have you ever been to Harold Ockengay's summer house in Bridgewater, New Hampshire? I'll have to take you there, being a historian. Because that's supposedly where all this stuff was thought up and worked on. And he had a summer place. It's not, I have a very modest little cabin in the woods about 5 miles from where all this happened. But it's sort of holy ground for Gordon Conwell's graduates. But there where Billy Graham and Ockengay basically had the vision of this seminary to be really the resource for the great evangelical awakening.
They would talk about it being, but it was a re-engagement in society with the academics, which was always a part of neo-evangelicalism, rather than just doing our own thing on the side, like fundamentalists, circling the wagons and keeping out the culture. They said, no, we're going to engage the culture, and we're going to engage it at the highest academic level. And so that's why they chose to have it in the Boston area, so they could connect and say we're going to be the Harvard of evangelicalism, or the Ivy League. And that's always been a concern.
And the place, the land up there was a Catholic Carmelite, wasn't it a Carmelite?
Carmelite. It continues to serve the Lord.
And Cardinal Cushing somehow was willing to sell the place to
yes, for a song. We thank you very much on behalf of the evangelicals. We thank the Roman Catholics at this point. No, but it's true. It was a great relationship that they had. They sat down and talked about it, the continuation of the work. It was only there like about 23 years as a Roman Catholic, because then you had Vatican II.
That's right.
And Vatican II's immediate decline. It was a high school training for the priesthood, and the decline went so rapidly. And we're going through we're going through a transformation not unlike that, where society's changing so rapidly now, and higher education, people think they don't need as much education, they don't need to go somewhere. They can sit in their bedroom in their pajamas and download church history, And we don't think that's a good idea, but we want to make it available as much as we can. And so now all the buildings that we built, as it grew and grew and grew, we have too many buildings because we have about the same amount of students as we had 20 years ago, but they're not going full time and they're not moving there.
That's the big difference.
Because
at one point the campus had, I was told, close to 1,000.
Oh, it had 1,300 students.
Extraordinary.
Not all of them lived there.
No, but it was, and then you started multiplying campuses. You had a campus in
well, the Boston campus started in '76, and then the Charlotte one was started in the '90s, and they built the buildings around 2002. And started in a church, and then the one in Jacksonville started in Presbyterian Church downtown, and then leased property. So that has been sort of a trend, regional campuses of a number of seminaries. Evangelicalism is very innovative, always very pragmatic, but also very innovative and willing to take risks. And so a number of seminaries set up other sites around the country, and now we found that so many people are not willing to drive 20 minutes to class.
Never mind.
If they can just sit on the computer and watch it.
That's the big change. And so you've inherited in the middle of a time of, well, one could say decline, but certainly change. That's radically changed the whole.
Well, let's talk about decline and change, because I think it's a good way of framing it. It's decline of white evangelicalism, it's a change in the student body. The student body is getting more diverse. Only 40% of our students are white. And so we're very Korean, very Chinese, very black, very Hispanic, very Brazilian, and just very global. And so we try to hire a faculty that represents the global church. So our faculty is very diverse if you get on the website. And we want to make sure that when a Brazilian comes, or somebody from Honduras, they might talk to somebody who speaks Spanish there. And we still have some areas to fill. We'll never represent the whole world.
Right.
But we want to make it more like Revelation 7. People from every tongue and tribe and people and nation gathered around the Lamb. And so I think that's a good image. It's kind of our vision statement that we have. Many languages, one Lamb, and no tears. And so we want to be driven by that vision of many languages coming together around the Lamb, and have a responsibility to wipe away tears in the world. And that very much fits in with our heritage also.
So how many students are on that campus that live there?
That live there on the campus is only about 200.
200, so
Yeah.
that is...
It's much different from
Yeah,
the 1,300.
right. Even when I started Christ Church, it was in the 90s. It was still booming there.
Oh
in
yeah,
terms of
I'm sure it
students,
was. Yeah.
But it's really much less a residential
Yeah.
seminary.
Yep.
Yeah.
And evangelicalism through the 60s and all the way through the 90s and up to 2000 or so just assumed constant growth. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the board back in the 1990s basically said, grow or die. Keep adding apartments, more students, more classes, more faculty, and that's the way you survive. Now, there are limits to growth.
Yeah.
And what happened is once we hit the 20th century, around 2000, we weren't growing. And you can't pay your bills. If you assume growth and there's no growth and you have fewer students and less income, but you still have the same number of buildings that need the maintenance. And so we really, by the time I came in 2019, the alarm bells were sounding from our accreditation agencies, because they realized you can't continue that way, you'll die. And had it not been for accreditation agencies, we probably wouldn't have made the adjustments as early as we did. Yeah.
So what happened? I mean, what was the good news out of the bad news as you tried to? As
Well, let's talk about bad news first. Okay, I want to end with good news.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
The bad news is we had to quickly make adjustments. I mean, quickly, because the notation that we had from the New England Commission on Higher Education gave us about 2 years to start paying our bills. We really hadn't paid all of our bills for about 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And so every year we're just kind of digging a deeper and deeper hole.
And so the accreditation had nothing to do with your academic life. It just had to do with your
Finances, yeah.
So they kind of challenged you on your fiscal
And
stuff.
that they did the right thing. They did what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
They say, okay, you're going to lose your accreditation because you have a business model which isn't going to last. And some schools close like within months, and all of a sudden the students, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So that was a kind warning that was frustrating and humiliating, because it was written up in the Boston Globe, and so then everybody knows about it. But it was a gift, because all of a sudden I did some questioning, found out exactly how much debt we had, external and internal. We borrowed from our own endowment, which is not illegal, but it's immoral, I think. And I said, we have to pay that back. So I announced to the Board of Trustees in February of 2020 that what our debt was, and they didn't know. And I said, but don't worry, I'm not leaving until we pay it all back. And if somebody would like to pay it back now, I'll leave. But nobody wanted me to leave, at least not yet. So, but
that was sort of a funny.
Well, I was hoping
it was a win-win, lose-lose.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
If they got all the money, you would have.
Yeah. So probably this spring we'll pay it all off. But the bad news was we had to let go of people. We had to restructure. We had to drop programs. We've gone for like 2 years without a full-time librarian, just a librarian, a very good librarian. Consultant comes in, and we have a library staff, but we're just bare bones. And now we're slowly beginning to build back. And the new business model is going to be built on an annual surplus, not barely paying our bills, but making sure we have extra. And I must admit, the Board of Trustees has been amazing in supporting this and helping me think through something. I'm not trained as a businessman. I'm trained as you probably don't know this, a 5th century Syriac scholar of Christianity in Persia. So this is not something I was prepared for.
Yeah.
But I do know that debt is bad and it needs to be paid off. And we're working on a business model now. So that's the good news. The good news is we thought we were going to have to sell the whole campus in order to save the school and then just lease a smaller property. And we actually had looked at about 10 or 12 properties in the Boston area so people could commute.
I remember that was on the radar with conversation about that.
Yeah, it was written up in periodicals and everything. But the market changed. And the value of apartments and houses has just gone up like this. I mean, our house, we've been here since 2019, has gone up about 45%. Wow. Our apartments went up in about 60 or 80% in value. And so we have 6 apartment buildings.
Yes.
And we'll sell those and work out a leaseback arrangement with the buyers. And with that money, we pay off all of our debt, increase our endowment, and then rehab buildings.
So who will buy the apartments?
Well, I can't tell you that right now, but they're nice people.
Yeah.
For the record, they're great people who understand what we're doing, strong Christians, one Roman Catholic, one Anglican. How's that for you?
Good.
And they really want to work with us. They want our students to live there. And so we're working on thinking about how we can work together, really for the sake of the town of Hamilton as well as for the seminary. And I think another part of the good news for us is most seminaries view themselves as monastic. You go away and you live, and it used to be young men that are not married would live together. And then later on it was married couples and families lived together. But you leave the world. Yeah. Well, now these apartments, the world's coming to us. Yeah. And we're going to be able to work together, play together, and hopefully have a coffee shop or some things where we share together so we're connected to the local community.
What's going back to combining your own missiological spirit? I mean, what is different about? I mean, an increasingly secular society where there was sort of with merit this sense of evangelicalism growing and spreading, and why conservative churches are growing, mega churches, all that, which was a wider part of the evangelical movement. Yeah. And then obviously it's hit a wall as well. So what's the vision for an evangelical seminary?
Yeah, that's a very good
in our culture in America.
I would say 2 or 3 things we have to focus on. Number one, reaching the immigrants, because the immigrants are the future of our country. They always have been, and not saying, oh, they're not the other, they're us. And bring them in, because when we have international students and immigrants in classes, they usually inspire some of our suburban, New England, Midwestern students. So I think that's one of the things. Lean into them, bring them in, allow them to set more of the agenda. The second thing is to be more intentional about church planting. In other words, there are many churches that are closing. Many churches that the maintenance is just too high, the congregation is too small, the income is too little, and so you're spending all your money trying to repair the roof. And we've seen many of them. As a matter of fact, the original church where Clarendon Street Baptist Church, where A.J. Gordon's seminary started, is now condos. Okay, beautiful condos with a big rose window there at the end, but it's condominiums. Yeah. And so churches are closing and they're dying, so then we should be planting churches and turn around and churches that in schools and in restaurants and so forth, and not necessarily a big property thing. So we've started a church planting program, cohorts, where you can plant a church and basically pay no tuition because you'll be raising support for the church and for your education, doing a 2-year degree in 3 years. Wow. So you take your time, you're planting your church, and you come together about 6 times during 3 years as a cohort to support one another. So that's an intentional way of recognizing what's going on in the larger society and say, we should respond. A third thing that we've done to respond is there are people who said, you've got so much property, it's so expensive, you should just move to Charlotte. You've got plenty of property there, and it's a better economy, And I imagine if I did that, I would go to heaven, not on my own merits, but on the merits of Christ. And Jesus would say, Sunquist, are you the guy that took the seminary from New England where you needed to be and you went south in the Bible Belt? What were you thinking? You're a missiologist. You should know better than that. Yeah, that's what he would say.
Yeah.
So we're staying, and we're going to lean into our urban campus in Boston. It's in Roxbury. Add to that more programs, try to do more teaching in the city, and then we're staying in Hamilton and trying to connect more and doing more programs for New England. But it's tough.
I mean, from what I know of much of Boston evangelicalism, it is the ethnic congregations that are the vitality of.
Yeah, there's a quiet revival going in now among Spanish-speaking persons in the Boston area, and most English speakers don't even know about it.
And by the way, that's really the same thing true in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Frankly, the Catholic Church, if you look at numbers, has not been declining as rapidly as, say, a lot of Protestant churches, but it's because of the massive influx of immigrants.
And that's the difference between us and Europe.
We just actually consecrated quite intentionally a new bishop in the Archdiocese, auxiliary bishop, who's a Brazilian. And the vision there is really, we need to now, because before that they were all like, Irish guys, all the bishops.
Sure.
From Cardinal O'Malley down.
Yep.
Now we've got someone who's really quite intentional that the Brazilian Catholic community is one of the largest parts of the
We have 3 Brazilians, 2 professors and 1 staff at Gordon Conway. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, and of course I always think it's a little bit God's sense of humor too, because it is the immigrants who are bringing Christianity back to what used to be a Christian.
That's right.
People. And they're bringing the gospel.
The Empire Strikes Back. Is one way it's been described.
So you're optimistic and.
Well, I'm optimistic now.
Anyway,
yeah, I am now, but it's been a bad.
For the last few years,
Ask me how bad it's been.
Oh, how bad is it?
I'll tell you how bad it's been. We had a pipe break in the top of an apartment building, 3 stories, so it flooded down the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor, and the basement storage. We had another building, the main pipe going into the apartment building burst and just flooded the whole 1st floor. Okay, this is my 1st and 2nd year. And then there was a thing called COVID. You probably heard of that. And we didn't know how we were going to survive.
Wow.
Because we're going through this difficulty with notation from the New England Commission of Higher Education.
And it's one disaster.
Yeah, and then one disaster. And then, did I mention lightning? Lightning struck our big academic center, and it blew out 2 HVAC machines, but the blowers kept working. So it couldn't get much worse. The roof was on fire, burning. The fire department came, smoke was blowing into the building, but the fire alarm system burnt out. So the fire alarm didn't go off, and it didn't shut on the sprinklers. And so the firemen came, and the whole building is smoke, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor, through the whole building. So when we finally get it all cleaned up and the water out, because of the smoke damage, the whole building had to be cleaned. All the walls, carpets removed, ceiling tiles all replaced in the whole building. It took 2 years to repair the building. So our insurance rates went up. So you have lightning, you have broken pipes, you have COVID, a notation.
You could quote Teresa of Avila, Lord, the way you treat your friends,
I know.
No wonder you have so few.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds almost Jobian,
But
see,
the reason I'm optimistic is we made it through all of that, and there are schools that didn't make it and that have closed. I won't mention any now, but it's just but I have friends there, board members, the president of a school, that closed. 138-year history of a seminary and college closed forever. And so we're in a place where we will be able to pay off all of our bills, increase our endowment, keep the land, and start a PhD program. So we're very thankful at this point, very thankful.
Well, my alma mater closed. I went to the Episcopal.
Oh, yeah, EDS.
Yeah, well, it was ETS, so it goes that far back.
Okay.
Episcopal Theological School, which proceeded. Although I must say, I'm not weeping over that because I wasn't sure the theological direction was.
It had something for everybody. Right?
Yeah, right. But, well, it is a challenge, but God, it's sort of really this profound, work of discernment. Lord, what are you, Jesus says, I only do what I see the Father doing. And so always the question becomes, Lord, what exactly are you doing so we can cooperate with you? Yeah.
Well, I think there is an opportunity to respond to where people are, to meet where they are, and to connect with them. And also to come back and to say our prayers. And like you said, say, Lord, what are you doing? What are we doing? What is our responsibility here? Are we just pumping out degrees and bringing people in? And so we have done a lot more with spiritual formation and discipleship now. So all of our students in the Hamilton campus are personally discipled. We're moving that way, personally discipled by a faculty member. And at other campuses, we're trying, and online, we're bringing along alumni to work with them. So it's not just downloading information, but there's an element of sociality and discipleship involved in theological education.
Are you also, in fact, in charge of the other two campuses? How does the structure work between Jacksonville, Charlotte, and Boston?
I don't have a clue. I really don't know how
But are you president of all of them?
Yeah, I'm a president of all of them. We have a provost who oversees the deans, and then we have a dean who runs the academic programs in Charlotte and Jacksonville, and then a dean who runs the academic programs there.
So that's a pretty demanding job, I would think, with all those responsibilities. But what one last thing with obviously with the new kind of education model that's so much not the classroom but the computer. How do you make sure what I would think would be some very elemental necessary features of Christian formation, like community and worship and things like that? How does that happen?
We work at it,
and
we talk about it. We don't just ignore it. There are online programs where they can just mass-produce students, and you just look at tape lectures. So we do different things. For example, I'm teaching a course out of Charlotte that meets every week, but I only have 3 intensives, Friday night and all day Saturday. So in 2 days, I'll fly down to Charlotte, have dinner with about 8 or 10 students there, and then teach 3 hours. And then the next day, have breakfast with some students, teach for 3 hours, have lunch, and then teach, and we have chapel over there. But there's, I think, 39 people in the class. And so others won't be there. They'll be online. But every other week, they meet in small groups online. So 4 people, they're discussing a question, then they do a write-up. So there is intentionally, I use the word sociality because that's the term that's often used in education. There must be curiosity for learning to take place. There must be sociality for learning to take place. And there must be failure if learning is to take place. So there are certain elements. But the sociality is the thing that's missing. And we're trying to bring that back by bringing people together online and in person, even if it's just a few times.
And particularly, I mean, a very profound sense of wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, I am there, and how we really understand that in terms of education and formation. Well, look at blessings on you. I'm exhausted just listening to.
Well, so am I. I didn't realize it was that bad until I said it.
The job description and the challenges, but well, I personally rejoiced that you were staying there. Only. Because that's how I think of the place. I know it, but also many students have come through there, are still dear friends of mine. So I rejoice that the place is flourishing. So thank you, Dr. Sunquist. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I hope if you're looking for a seminary education, a creative one, Gordon Conwell is in North Shore, and they have actually a lot of dimensions and many degree programs, not simply for pastors preparing for ordained ministry, but all kinds of educational programs.
Counseling is big.
Social work in behalf of the church, but a Christian formation for the whole church, not just the clergy, the whole church to reach the world for Christ. So there's a lot of resources there. So blessings and thank you again for having been here.